Welcome to my kitchen. This is where my husband Bob and my name is Candy. This is where we make our famous vegetable soup and vegetable broth. You know, next year I'll be 70, but I have more energy now than I did when I was 30. And I think it has a lot to do with the 2 hours that we devote every week to making this incredible soup and incredible juice. That way we can enjoy the soup throughout the week, sometimes just drinking the broth, and sometimes having a wonderful bowl of soup. And we can enjoy the juice 3 or 4, maybe even 5 days out of the week, just by investing that little 2 hours. We take the pulp that's left over from making the juice, which we use to make the juice, kale and cabbage and carrots and beets and cucumbers and parsley and celery. We take that pulp that's left over after we make this incredible juice, and I use that to make the soup. Let's show you how that's done. So to make this incredible, rich, economical vegetable base broth for the soup, we take the pulp from making the juice and we put it in a double boiler like this, and we simmer it for 20, maybe 30 minutes. It's not an exact science. And that releases nutrients that otherwise you might not get so efficiently. You know, some nutrients are best absorbed raw. And when we drink the vegetable juice, we get those marvelous nutrients. But some nutrients are best absorbed cooked. And so this way we get the best of both worlds. So to make that vegetable broth, which is the basis for our soup, even more nutritious, we take some other things that would normally have gotten thrown out and we pulverize them in the blender. So first I add about 3/4 cup of water, and then I add asparagus stems, if I have them available, and celery tops. Remember, we used the celery as a basis for our juice. This is some cabbage leaves that were left over, parsley stems and some parsley leaves, broccoli stems that we normally wouldn't consume, and all that beautiful kale that we had. What about the stems of the kale? Well, let's add them to our vegetable broth. And this is my favorite thing of all. These gorgeous beet leaves from the beets normally would just get thrown out, but here we're adding the stems and the leaves, and we're going to liquefy this and then add it to that vegetable broth mixture. This gets really loud, so I'm going to pause it for a moment and then show you the finished product. And it only takes a few seconds to do this. Now that that's liquefied, we're going to take it and just add it to the pulp that's simmering on the stove. I'm going to take a look at that. It even smells healthy, like a fresh field. So this marvelous liquid that used to be stems and leaves gets added to our pulp that's simmering on the stove, and will make the most fabulous, nutritious vegetable broth. Of course, we're going to strain this after it's simmered. We'll show you that in a minute. The pulp mixture has finished simmering, so now it's time for us to strain that pulp to give us that wonderful, rich vegetable broth. And it's much easier to do this with 2 people, and so Bob is going to help us do that. I take an empty pot and a strainer, set that there, and here we go. Can you see? First we drain off as much water or broth as we can in that manner. And then we toss the pulp out. So Okay. This is hot, so you want to be careful. And you'll see in just a minute why we like to strain it. I don't know if you can see that, but this broth is very rich in color and flavor. And if you buy vegetable broth at the store, I think it's expensive. And we were able to make this with just scraps. Now that we have this wonderful, rich vegetable broth finished and strained, it's time to go ahead and start making our soup. So one of the things that I like to add is about a half a lemon of fresh lemon juice. And I make this up in advance and freeze it in these little cups. It adds a zing to the soup without having to add any MSG or other bad chemicals. And then I add a heaping tablespoon of salt. Now most of the time in our cooking I use real salt because it doesn't have any additives in and it's a higher quality salt with minerals in it, but it's not iodized. And we do need some iodine, so I always use iodized salt when I do this. Then I add a can of green beans, and the nice thing is you can put in your soup whatever you want. I also add 2 cans of organic pinto beans because I love them, and because pinto beans are just such an important food to help our guts stay healthy. And then this is brown rice, and I very carefully rinse my brown rice well, and once it's rinsed, then it's ready to go into the soup. I like to add basil because I love the flavor of basil, and in the summer we have a garden that has oregano in it, and when I add oregano I usually put that in the blender and make it very fine to the broth, but oregano is another good addition. And now we're going to let this cook for about 20 minutes to a half hour. And then I'll be adding some other ingredients. To prepare more vegetables to go in our soup, I love using a food processor. It's not absolutely necessary, but it makes the process so easy and so fast. So the first thing I do is add my cabbage. Now this particular processor has a blade that is adjustable. So at this stage, I always, and you can see that I had it set at just about 1/8 of an inch. And I don't need all these onions to make my soup. So I'll come in here and take a few out, and that way I have some onions for my salad today or a sandwich. And then I adjust this because I like my carrots and my celery to be larger hunks. And I take this middle section out because that impacts the shape of the food. So I'll take a carrot and a piece of celery, and this goes really fast. So that didn't take us very long, but now we have some fantastic vegetables to go into our soup. And so now we add the vegetables that we just cut up. The carrots, the onions, the celery, and all that marvelous cabbage. And I like to let this boil for about 10 minutes or so. And the last thing that I like to add to this soup is a bag of mixed vegetables, just to give it some more bulk, and some additional easy nutrition. And those usually take, I would say about 10 minutes to get to be the right consistency. Now comes the time when we want to show you how we make the juice that yields the incredible pulp that is the foundation for our soup. The whole process only takes about 2 hours. And we have done it in as little as an hour and a half, but 2 hours is a really comfortable time to do it. From the time that I get the vegetables out of the fridge and wash them and arrange them and cut them, to when Bob actually makes the juice and cleans everything up and we have the soup finished, it's 2 hours usually. But that 2 hours is such a great investment because it gives us this incredible juice and incredible soup. I'd like to mention that the beets that we use to make the juice come usually in a big bunch of beets. We showed you that picture previously, and I cut them up, and this bag will actually give me enough beets for Bob to make juice for a month and a half to 2 months. We just take a handful each week, and that's what we use in the juice making process.
I like to add the vegetables with a certain order. I like to start off with the cucumbers because they're so moist and it lubricates the system. And then I like to follow that with the cabbage and the kale because they're somewhat waxy and they can clog up the system. So when I get those through, then I can follow up with the celery, the beets especially, and then the carrots afterwards. So it seems to flow a lot better that way. So I'll begin by just turning the machine on. And I just press them down. It's a masticator. It just basically chews all the vegetables for us. That entire plate would make an enormous salad to eat. But we can get all those nutrients in just drinking a small glass or two.
While Bob's doing the kale, I just wanted to add that the parsley amazes me because we'll buy an entire bunch of parsley, and in the summer we grow it, and we'll bring it in the house, and I'll wrap it up very tightly so that there's not much oxygen with it, and it can stay vibrant and green for weeks. It must be so healthful because it's just amazing to me how beautiful and vibrant and green it stays for such an extended period of time. Oh, I should also tell you about this incredible juicer. It is called an omega masticating juicer, as Bob mentioned, the masticating factor. And we've used different kind of juicers, but this juicer that actually simulates your teeth chewing the food, it keeps it fresh longer because it doesn't rely on a centrifugal force that would apply heat and damage to the veggies. It just, and it's so easy to clean. And we love the Omega company because they have such an incredible warranty. It's the longest warranty I've ever heard of. And I did have one piece that I needed replaced at one. It was a small extra piece, and I called them and they sent it to me. So they're really great about following up with their warranties. Well, he's still working on kale. I should tell you that the food processor you saw me using was from Breville, and I have loved that food processor. I'm sure there's other food processors that would work, but that's the one that I've used and I've been really happy with it. And the blender that you saw me use whenever we were making pulverizing and liquefying the stems of the kale and the parsley and the beet stems, etc., that juicer was a Vitamix. And I've used a few others, even I used another so-called high-powered juicer, but it just didn't compare to the Vitamix.
I love the Vitamix juicer, and every once in a while Costco puts them on sale at an incredibly great price, so you can't go wrong. This is the pulp that I use as the basis for the vegetable broth that I make that makes our soup so yummy. And it's just so easy to take it. You can see the carrots, you can see all these pretty colors. And I'll freeze that. And then next week, when it's time to make juice and soup, the first thing I'll do is get this boiling on the stove while we're doing those other things. And then I come along and drink it.
How much you want?
That's good, that's good. I like to save enough so that I can have some for the next 2 or 3, sometimes 4 days. The flavor of this juice on that first day is just so incredible. It tastes really healthful. And if I were drinking this just for pleasure, I probably wouldn't, because it's not that yummy, but my body just seems to say, thank you, this is exactly what I needed. And if you don't love the flavor of it, you can always just drink it quickly without taking a breath. And I do that on day 2, 3, and 4, but it has helped my energy level so much, don't you think?
Yeah. The flavor is not the beverage that you want at the beach, but you get used to it, and actually that tastes pretty good. The carrots in the beets add a sweetener to it.
Yeah.
And you don't really taste a cabbage and all these other things you might think would be strong, but depending on how much you put in of each, less cabbage and more carrots, it'd be a fairly sweet drink.
Yeah, and it's a flexible thing. I mean, you can add other veggies to it, do whatever you want. This is just how we do it here in our kitchen.
And here is the completed soup. It looks beautiful with the beans and the carrots and all these wonderful vegetables, and especially this incredibly wonderful broth. And one of the things I like to do before I eat my soup is to take, maybe a half a teaspoon of raw tahini and just add it to the bowl and stir it around. It gives it a richness because, as you remember, there were no added fats in this soup. So that gives you some really healthy omega-3 fats, and it just makes the soup a little bit more delicious. And I wish you were here. I'd love to share this with you. And that's why we made this video. Bob and I want you to have the health benefits that we've been able to experience by having fresh green juice and this delicious soup for lunch.